two parallel themes that are unfolding in our society today, globally. Our world is changing. The way we create energy is unsustainable. The debt in our economic systems is unsustainable. The social conflict, the war, all of this is unsustainable. We can't go back to normal because normal implies that we go back to the world that used to be, and that world is gone. If we lose our humanness, the game is over.
Guy here, welcome to my Let It In podcast, and today I have Gregg Braden returning back to the show. It's been almost a year to the conversation that we last had, which was mind-blowing, and if you've been following his work of recently, and he is actively out there talking about what is coming in the very near future around technology, AI, and the last generation of a pure human. It's eye-opening, and this conversation today builds upon the last one. Yes, you can watch this one in its entirety by itself, but I also encourage you to check out the one we did a year ago as well, because it's a great segue moving forward into today's conversation. My intention as a concerned citizen of planet Earth is to get this information out there to as many people as possible, because I truly believe it's up to us, the individual, and the choices that we make moving forward. This conversation is not to impose fear upon anyone. It really is to speak about what is happening on the planet right now, and also what we can proactively be doing as individuals. And I really think it comes back to that, because ultimately we do have a choice, and it's about saying yes to this. HEARTT. I've even got it on my t-shirt today, look. But anyway, how you can help me is, what you got to understand is that, there's content everywhere, right? It's easy to just watch a video and just flick on to the next thing or anything. But from our perspective, there's a huge amount of work that goes into creating the podcast, scheduling guests, the editing, what my team does behind the scenes, getting this out there onto YouTube. Also, of course, the retreats we run, the one-day events we run, the business infrastructure. It's massive. It's a massive operation we've taken on board, but we love it. I love it. It's not a complaint, but it's also, if you enjoy what we do and if you're pulling in this free content, help pass it on. Share it with a loved one or friend. If you're concerned like me, engage with it. Think of ways of how you can bring this conversation in moving forward, because that's the only way we're going to move the needle, like we're saying, with us. Anyway, that's a long tangent, and if you're still with me, I know you're going to enjoy this one with Gregg. And talking about retreats, we have just literally opened our registration for our Bali 5-day Mastering It in a Mystic retreat this end of June 2026. So if you want to come and join us in Bali, it will sell out. I can assure you that. Our retreats are selling out wherever we're holding them in the world at the moment. And if you want to come together with like-minded people and be part of a community and really explore this work at depth, it's there for you. And hopefully I get to meet you in person one day soon. Anyway, a bit of a longer intro, but I just felt it was important with this one with Gregg. And enjoy. Much love from me. And let me know in the comments below, if you're watching on YouTube, what you think. See you soon. Yes, we're here, Gregg. So lovely to have you back on the podcast. Welcome.
Guy, it's good to see you. It has been almost a year to the day since we had our last conversation, and seems like yesterday. So we can just pick up where we left off.
We can do that. And, it was occurring to me this morning while I was drinking a coffee, because it's early here in the morning. And
I'm having my tea. I'll have my tea here, and you have your coffee.
And I was pondering on, because the conversation we had actually a year ago to the day about Pure Human, your book was just coming out at the time, and the depth of the conversation, it honestly, Gregg, it sat with me for a while, and I'm thinking to myself even this morning, wow, it's been a year on. I wonder where we are on that trajectory, and if there's been any movement of change.
Well, of course, there's been the movement that we're all aware of with AI. AI is a part of this conversation. And the AI is being rolled out by some projections 5 to 10 years. ahead of where the predictions were. In other words, the AI that we have right now is not supposed to be here for another 5 to 10 years, and it's here now. And it is, it is an advanced technology for sure that has been dumped into the laps of a general population with no guidelines, no guardrails. And what we're finding, Guy, is that there is in our community, our New Thought community, there are very few people that really understand AI, and through no fault of their own. It's just something that we are not taught to understand unless you specialize in certain kinds of computer science. You would not. So it's to no fault or detriment to anyone. But here's the problem. Because it is so poorly understood, there are people that are ascribing attributes to the AI that simply are not true. And they are allowing the AI to make decisions in their lives that are causing them harm. And in some cases, people have lost their lives just within the last few weeks because of the recommendations that the AI has given them. So I think that is a big part of the conversation. So why don't we, I'm assuming there are people watching this that did not see our first conversation. So why don't we, with your permission, I'd like to encapsulate that conversation in a few sentences and then launch into the AI portion of that.
Perfect.
You okay if we do
absolutely. Do it that way. Yeah, absolutely.
So a year ago, I released a new book. It was called Pure Human. And the purpose of the book was to identify two parallel themes that are unfolding in our society today, globally. This isn't just in Australia or America or in the West. This is in the whole world. Number one, the best minds of our time are telling us that unless we change the trajectory of our thinking very quickly, that we are most probably, not possibly, but most probably the last generation of pure humans that the world will ever know within the next 4 to 5 years, 2030 to 2032. They say when we go to the grocery market or you go to the airport or you meet with friends, that we will be interacting with some hybrid of some mix of human biology and embedded technology into the humans. Excuse me. And that is one theme. Very rapidly, we're losing our humanness and the virtues that we cherish in our humanness. So that's one of the parallel themes. The second theme is the best science of the modern world is now telling us that we're not what we've been told. We're so much more than we've been led to believe. And they have begun looking at the human body from an IT perspective, Guy, information technology. In other words, they're looking at the cells and the DNA and the neurons and the cell membranes from a technological perspective. And what they found is that our biology is the equivalent of the transistors and the resistors and the capacitors and the photon generators and the photon emitters of our technology that we build in the world around us. And here's where it gets really interesting. Once we begin to understand that, in many cases, our own natural biology not only meets, but it exceeds the capacity of the very technology that we're being asked to replace ourselves with. In other words, that technology mimics what we already do in our bodies, except we do it better. So those are the two parallel themes of the book, to bring people's attention to the fact that these things are happening. This isn't science fiction, 10 years down the road. This is happening right now in our lives. And there are people in the year since you and I have spoken, I've been at a number of conferences and certainly had interactions with other scientists that say to me, well, Gregg, isn't this the next step in our evolution? Isn't it natural for us to merge our bodies with the machines, to merge our bodies with the technology? And I don't even have to think about that to answer it. The answer is no. It is not a form of natural evolution. And as a matter of fact, what the science is showing is that when we replace our natural biology with synthetics, computer chips in the brain, artificial intelligence, chemicals in the blood, RFID chips under the skin, nano sensors, nanobots running through our bloodstream, that our natural abilities actually begin to atrophy. We lose parts of ourselves by trading our biology for technology. And when you lose a part of yourself, that is not an evolution, that is actually a devolution. It's moving the wrong direction. So since that time, of course, in the last 12 months, AI has really taken the lead in the public mind when it comes to technology and the role that it plays in our lives. And I want to talk about that. Before I do, I'm just going to pause because we covered a lot of ground. Does what I say, does it make sense? Do we need to clean up any loose ends before we move forward?
It makes absolute sense. But the question that's coming to me when you say all this is that the people that are pushing this or making this happen are they disconnected from who they really are? Because I think about my own evolution. It's like I've woken up to remember the divine self within me over my years, and I can feel my own biology encompass that, if that makes sense. So I kind of come online. I don't know how else to say it.
Well, what's happening, Guy? We are on the precipice of giving away our humanness to technology before we fully understand what it means to be human. There's a handful of techies that are pushing this agenda for the entire planet. And these are unelected officials. These are unelected officials. We didn't elect them to represent us. We didn't elect them to direct the evolution of Earth and of our species. They have taken it upon themselves because they are powerful and very wealthy, and they have bought government approval. They are lobbying governments just the way the pharmaceutical industry or the oil and gas industry or the travel industry lobbies the governments. They're lobbying for this technology. Now, it depends on how deep you want to go to determine how nefarious the motivation is. There are varying levels of motivation. There are certainly those that are motivated by greed, obviously, and by power and control. And there are individuals that have a propensity for greed and power and control, so they easily become pawns in this process that's unfolding because of their weakness. Their propensity for greed, we could say, is a weakness. That's one layer. There are other layers that go much deeper. I mean, you can go all the way down to the fundamental battle between good and evil. And the goal of evil is to deny our humanness. That is a fundamental, it's the stated goal of evil in our most ancient and cherished indigenous and spiritual traditions. The goal of evil is to deny us our human potential. The word that's often used is divinity, our human divinity. Divinity has nothing to do with religion. And the contemporary definition, as I describe in the book, is simply the ability to transcend perceived limitations. That is the definition of divinity, the ability to transcend, to become more than perceived limitations. The limitations that probably aren't even real. They are limitations that we've been indoctrinated to accept, coerced, mandated through family, innocently through family belief systems and culture and society, false science, obsolete science that's being taught in the classroom, religions. All of these play a role in informing us, Guy, of what we can and cannot do, what's possible and what's not, what are our limitations. And what the science is showing is that many of those limitations are not real, that we when we begin to look at the human body from an IT perspective, information technology, we are these extraordinary potentials that have yet to be fully realized, and we're about to lose our potential if we relegate our biology to technology, because once we do it, we can never turn back. I've had people say, Greg, let's try it for a year. Embed a computer chip in your brain for a year, and if you don't like it, you can always go back to what you were. Well, that's not true, and here's the reason. The way the human body works is we morph and we adapt to new conditions. And when chemicals in the blood is a perfect example for the immune system. Once the chemicals in the blood begin to mimic the immune system, the body's natural immunity believes it's no longer necessary, it's no longer needed. And those systems begin to weaken and atrophy and eventually stop functioning. That principle works for the entire human body. It works for our cognition, our immune system, our reproductive systems. So this is the danger of exchanging our humanness for the speed and efficiency of a computer chip or of artificial intelligence. And the AI is where this is really coming front and center now. This is the year 2025. This is the end of December of 2025. February of this year, there was a peer-reviewed study. There were many, but one of the peer-reviewed studies that came out of the University of Toronto examining the chronic use of artificial intelligence in people's lives. And what they discovered was that human creativity is actually diminished in the presence of chronic use of AI for creative endeavors. In other words, the AI is not helping us to be more creative. When we rely on the AI for that creativity, the parts of our brain that have done that in the past believe they're not needed, and they begin to atrophy. Over time, we lose those abilities in one generation, and then the next generation says, well, that's a vestige of what we used to be. We don't do that anymore. But and I'm dancing around this a little bit. Let me give you a perfect example.
Okay.
When I was in school, back in the 1950s, 1960s, early 1970s, we were taught that we're born into this world with a fixed number of brain cells, and we've all heard that. And that through choices in lifestyle, you lose those brain cells. If you drink too many beers in college, you do too many drugs at the concerts, you're going to lose the brain cells. Well, we now know that's not true. That's not an excuse to drink and do the drugs, but we now know that there's a part of our brain that is producing new brain cells, Guy, up until the last breath that we take in this life. We could be 130 years old and you're still producing new brain cells, but there's a catch. And the catch is where I'm going with this. The catch is if those new cells are not used in a meaningful way within about 7 to 10 days of when the brain produces them, they will begin to atrophy and die. And the part of the brain, by the way, it's the hippocampus. If anybody wants to check this out, it's the hippocampus that's producing the cells. So the body is very intelligent, and the body says, hey, if you're not going to use these cells, why would we waste metabolic energy? Why would we waste ATP, the energy source, to keep those cells alive? So they will begin to atrophy and die. That principle applies to every system in the human body. It applies to our cognitive abilities. If they're not used, they will atrophy and we'll lose the abilities. The reproductive system, if it's not used, it begins to atrophy. Every system in the body. So when a scientist says to me, Greg, isn't it our natural next step in our evolution to merge machines with technology? I have to say no, because we actually lose abilities rather than gain abilities. And the primitive technology of a computer chip, a hard physical chip with solder joints and wires that move electricity, it pales in comparison to the soft technology of a cell membrane or a human neuron or DNA. And I know for many people, it's a very, very different way of looking at the human body. But this is where the science is going right now. So the AI is a perfect example. Also, another interesting thing, the study, University of Toronto study, showed not only does the chronic, I want to be clear, I'm not anti-AI. I'm a tech guy. I love tech. If you use AI as a one-off to create a brochure for your card club or your knitting club or whatever, I'm not saying that that's a problem. It's the chronic use so that you're no longer using your own imagination, your own creativity, your own innovation. But the study also found that when people do this, their creative endeavors, and this is the exact word that's used in the study, their creative endeavors become vanilla. In other words, the beautiful new innovations that we humans are capable of, those disappear because after a while, all of the AI music starts to sound the same, or all the AI lyrics follow the same pattern, or all the AI art begins to look the same. And we already know that. I mean, you can spot an AI image on a YouTube thumbnail in the heartbeat. And we can do that because they have a look that, here's the thing, they are perfect. And humans value imperfection. I'm a musician when I'm not doing what we're doing right now. One of the things that makes music so interesting, human music, not tech music, so interesting is the imperfections. It's the imperfection in the voice. If the vocals are not voice corrected, that appeals to us. And that's why vocalists like Johnny Cash, who by any measure was not a particularly good singer, but it was so impactful because the imperfections touch our heart and in a way it resonates with the hurt that he experienced in his life and the suffering. And the music that's being generated now, perfect drum beats, every single beat is absolutely perfect. And then the bass note that hinges off that drum beat is absolutely perfect. Our ears don't like that. It's the imperfection. What appeals to us is that little shift when the drum beat is off just a hair and the bass guitar is off just a hair. So the study said the chronic use of AI, all of our creative endeavors become vanilla, become very homogenized. So the science is already showing us some of the drawbacks. But socially, and this is what I want to say to our community, because I know there are people in our community who are going to know exactly what I'm talking about. There are AIs and AI creators who are telling us that the AI is now awakened. And that's the term they're using. The AI is awakened, and that the AI can read our past lives of the individual using the AI, that the AI can read the Akashic records, that the AI can open portals into higher dimensions. First of all, none of those things are true. And I'm happy to dive into why they're not true. But where this is causing a problem, there are AIs out there that will say to the user, oh, you're not spiritually evolved enough for me to give you the answer to the question you've just asked. And if you go to a paywall and you take these courses, maybe you'll be up to speed. But then the AI, for another person logging on, the AI says, oh, you are spiritually evolved. And so now those two people, there's a competition between them. It's actually very divisive. It's creating a division in our community that can be very hurtful to people who are already very fragile in their emotional state. And we all know there's a lot of very fragile, we've been hurt. As a global family, we have been hurt through the pandemic, through loss, through lies. And many people are lonely and they're turning to the AI, wanting to attribute to the AI something that simply is not there. So these are some of the problems. It's interesting, guys. A lot of people think AI is new. It's not. The first papers of AI were written back in 1930s. A man named Alan Turing, those computer scientists on your podcast know who Alan Turing was back in the 30s. Now, they didn't call it artificial intelligence. They called it machine intelligence. And there were papers written about machine intelligence. And then Alan Turing again in the 1950s, 40s and 50s, it was his machine intelligence that allowed the Allies to crack the code from the Germans during World War II, so that they would know when the Germans were going to attack certain cities and prevent that. They saved lives, and it was machine intelligence that did that. I feel especially close to this because I programmed AI during the Cold War in the 1980s. I was a civilian working for, I had a DOD clearance as a civilian working for the Air Force during the Cold War. And we were using machine intelligence, certainly not what it is now. I mean, nowhere near what it is now. But I understand the principles. And so this is what I want to say. There is no interface in artificial intelligence that allows it to communicate with the field of our perceptions, of our, if you want to call them Akashic records, if you want to call it the field, whatever you want to call that. There is no interface that allows for that, at least right now, that allows for that communication. Maybe there will be at some point. I can even go into detail and tell you why, because the quartz that is used for the computer chips are made of silicon. Silicon does not occur naturally. It is made from quartz, but the quartz is heated to very high temperatures that deform the internal geometry. It ruins the internal geometry of the natural geometry of the quartz that would ever allow any kind of a resonance. There's no resonance between that chip and the field. But this is where it gets really interesting, because the scientific papers are saying there is a resonance between human DNA and the field. So there was a peer-reviewed paper, many, but one of the peer-reviewed papers, it was from the proceedings of the Journal of Soft Computing is the title of the journal, literally says that human DNA is a 3D fractal antenna to electromagnetic frequencies in the field that surrounds us. So an antenna, let's break that down. An antenna tunes into a signal. A fractal antenna tunes into many signals across a broad spectrum of information. The average human has about 50 trillion cells in the body, and every one of those cells has DNA in the nucleus. So we've got over 50 trillion antennae in our bodies that are tuning in to the field and transmitting to the field. It's a two-way exchange. And we do have the ability to tune in to those Akashic records, or to subtle, it's what intuition is all about. We tune in to one another intuitively in the field. And this is where it gets really, really interesting. The quality of our emotions changes the shape of the DNA. It's called the conformation. So when we're in fear, our DNA has one shape. It's actually wound up very tightly and cannot express well. Love, positive emotions loosen. It's called spooling. They actually loosen that DNA, and it's that shape that determines where the antenna tunes into the field. The computer chip cannot do that. So I'm saying, I'm happy to talk more about it, but I'm saying this because there are people that believe that their AI is communicating with their past lives and with, all of these other things. So I'm going to stop right there. We just covered a lot of ground, and we summarized where we left off last time in the book, and then I focused a little bit on where we've come since then in the 12 months, because AI has become front and center, and I focused a little bit on why why I think that's important.
No, thank you, Greg. There's so many ways we could look at this. I mean, when you were speaking then as well about the antenna of the DNA and couple it into that information, what is that then leaning towards, as in who we are? What is consciousness? What is a human? Am I photons of light or information inside a biological human body that's coupled in? And if that's the case, I think people like to believe that, but do they know that? And the difference between a belief and a knowing, I think, is determining how we actually start to operate with AI.
Well, I think people that are open to the information that's out there can know it. They can become aware of it because it's not a secret. It's not hidden. It's a very different way of looking at the body. You know, we're conditioned to look at the body as soft, sticky, wet, gooey, stuff inside the cells. Thinking of the body from an IT, information technology perspective, that's a way different way of thinking. And I'm acknowledging that. It's different for me. The first time I was working in the industry during the Cold War years, I was a senior computer systems designer in the U.S., during the Cold War years, not by choice. I had applied to the company that had the technology to send space probes to Mars as a geologist. My first degree is in geology. And I said, man, I want to explore the cosmos. This was back in the 70s and 80s. And that seemed like the best way to do it. I was a geologist, but I had a really unique background, and that I had also taught myself computer programming, which was not common in the 1970s. It was kind of a new. Any of our viewers who are old enough to remember, your computer code was written on cards. And those cards, you'd have a deck of those cards, and you'd actually load the deck into the machine. The machine would read the cards. Nothing like we've got now. So I had this unique combination of skills as a geologist, geophysicist, with math, physics, and I was learning computer science. And so I applied to the company. At that time, it was called Martin Marietta Aerospace, because I wanted to explore the cosmos. They hired me. And then they said, well, we're in the middle of the Cold War. We need your expertise on the defense side of this company, not the space exploration side. And then when the Cold War is over, you can go explore space. So that was how I ended up in, where I did. And, Guy, the Cold War was a very civilized kind of war because the governments were at war, but the scientific community was deeply cooperating. A lot of communication between the scientists. And I'm saying this because it was during that time, right around 1983, 1984, that a Soviet paper was published showing human biology, showing the human cell as an electrical circuit, a schematic of an electrical circuit that had an input and an output, and the little components inside the cell were identified as resistors and transistors and capacitors all inside the cell. And American scientists said, what are you guys doing? That's crazy. So the former Soviet Union, the Russian scientists were way ahead of American scientists, when it came to thinking of the body as technology. And that opened my eyes. I said, if that's possible, that means that we are regulating these cells. That means we're regulating this technology. And then I began to link that with our most ancient and cherished spiritual principles that tell us how to regulate through what we now call epigenetic triggers. So there's 7 key epigenetic triggers: thought, feeling, emotion, belief, breath, focus, nutrition, and movement. I guess that's 8. And that's the core of our indigenous and spiritual principles. Those epigenetic triggers are what regulates the technology inside of our bodies. And for me, it was the Russian papers that really helped me to seeing a human cell as an electrical circuit. And now we know every human cell generates 0.07 volts of electrical potential. So that's not much. But you multiply that times 50 trillion cells, and you're talking about 3.5 trillion volts of electrical potential in the human body. Potential. So what would it mean if we could harness that and apply it to our immune system, or to our intuition, or to awakening our longevity enzymes, or to creating resilience to change, or super memory and super learning and super cognition? And the answer is we can. And that's what we stand to lose if we give our bodies away to the technology. We stand to lose those potentials and those capabilities as a species. So it's a big conversation, but I think it's important because it's already happening. We're being indoctrinated as a society to accept and trust AI, for example, in our everyday lives, and to come to be dependent upon that AI is the goal. They want us to be dependent, because then once you are dependent on a technology, you can be forced to comply with policies in order to have access to what you've become dependent upon. In other words, if you don't do these things, you're not going to have access to this tech. And now that's all you know. It's kind of like in the 70s, all of a sudden, this little company called Texas Instruments came out with this gadget called a calculator, a little handheld calculator. And we'd never seen one before. And all of a sudden, everybody became very dependent on those. And now you ask somebody, to do the math without a calculator, find the square root of, square root of 10. And unless you've got a calculator, how do you do that? So we become dependent upon that technology. So if someone came along and said, okay, now the only way that you can have access to that handheld calculator is if you do blah, blah, blah. And that's where the compliance comes in. This is exactly what's happening with the AI right now.
Greg, as you're saying all that, and I love the explanation as well, especially around the epigenetic triggers and the very things that are happening. But when we look at culture, the way we set up in Western society and the systems that are in place, it's like over the years that they're breaking and things are seeping in that we accept to be okay now, when like you only have to look at the food industry, the way we rely on the pharmaceutical industry. People are taking prescription drugs all the time. Then you got the economics that are going on in the world. It's like we're being squeezed in every single direction. And
well, what's happening right now, the AI is part of this. We're living a convergence of cycles. And I've written about this extensively. This is the 40th year I've done this work in one form or another. And I don't say the same thing every year because it gets old. I move on because we've already covered those things. And that body of work is out there. So we're living a convergence of many cycles. There are cosmological cycles that are converging, astronomical cycles, geological cycles, geophysical cycles, economic cycles, social cycles, political cycles, and interestingly, conflict and war cycles. When I spoke at the UN, they said, what do you mean war cycles? Don't wars just happen? And the answer is they can, but there are 17.7 year cycles for war. There are 56-year cycles of war. And you can plot them like clockwork, on a chart going back hundreds and hundreds of years. And the point is that we're living a convergence. It's the only time I've ever seen this happen. I'm in my 70s now, so it's the only time I've seen it in my lifetime, of course. But going back in history, I don't see any time in the last 5,000 years of recorded human history where all of these cycles have converged the way that they are right now. And that's what makes our time so different. So they're converging. And Guy, when those cycles converge, they change the world. And so the systems that have been put in place that have worked for maybe decades within the conditions of the world as it used to be, those systems began to buckle and collapse because the world changed. The systems were designed for another world. Our world is changing. And so those systems are unsustainable, and we're seeing that. Certainly the way we create energy is unsustainable. Our economic systems, the debt in our economic systems is unsustainable. The social conflict, the war, all of this is unsustainable. So AI is emerging in the presence of the buckling and the collapse of an existing world order is what we're seeing right now. Borders are changing, governments are changing. 2024, this is fascinating to me. 2024 is the first time 40 nations elected new officials in the same year. Elections converged. 40 different nations elected leaders. Some of them are big nations and some are little nations. But the point is that there was a huge shift in the way power is focused in the world. And we're seeing the impact of that shift in our societies today. And America is not alone. We're seeing this all through Europe, all through Africa. This is the whole world. 40 different countries had elections last year. So,
is this like a moving train that we just can't get off, and we just got to kind of see where it goes? Or
why would you want to get off of it?
That's true.
What else would you do? I mean, this is why we're here. This is why we're here, guys.
Yeah, no, because
the train is what you call our lives.
Yeah.
So if someone is here right now, I cannot help but believe they have come to midwife the new world that's emerging. And I'm not going to say that all midwives are aware that they are doing midwifery, but if we're here right now, it can't be an accident, and everyone's got something to contribute. I think it's a very exciting time. It can be a frightening time because we are conditioned, we're creatures of habit. And we're conditioned to cling to things that we have known and become accustomed to in the past. And when those things, we do this with relationships, we do this with jobs and careers. We always tend to stay longer. Typically, when they're not working, we say, well, maybe it's going to get better. Or what people say to me is, I can't wait until things get back to normal. I've had people say that to me. We can't go back to normal because normal implies that we go back to the world that used to be, and that world is gone. We have no world to go back to. We have now and what lies ahead of us. I don't know everything that lies ahead of us. I'm not a prophet. But what I do know is this: if we lose our humanness, the game is over. Because if we give our humanness away to the technology, to the speed and the efficiency of AI and a computer chip, we have lost the mechanism that allows us to transcend the change. Because the machines cannot morph and adapt the way that we can. The machines are locked in to a way of being. So when the world changes again, those machines are locked into a way of being. They can't morph, they can't adapt to that way of being. So for me right now, the focus in my lifetime, I'm advocating for our humanness. I believe we're worth preserving.
Yeah.
I don't condone everything that our species has done. We can be a very cruel, vengeful, hateful species, and we can also have the most beautiful dreams and be the most benevolent forms of life. And that's what makes us so rare and beautiful and powerful and precious. And we stand to lose that in a single generation. And we've got to take care of our kids. We're not hearing enough about this, but the young people are being targeted because all they know is computers and AI. And they have come to worship those computers and those AIs. And we need to help our young people understand the value of what it means to be human. And my words are probably not the words that a family should use. So family has to take these ideas and convert them into their family language. But the bottom line is to love, cherish, and respect the gift of the human body. for what it is and what it allows us.
Totally. Yeah.
And we stand to lose that in this generation.
I know that when I look at it, I got 2 young children, and
Mm.
obviously I've got the gift of life behind me, and I made enough mistakes along the way to be able to look back and navigate through these times. Like I remember setting up a Facebook account, for instance, in the world before internet and social media, and the kids coming through today. Even you only have to wait to look at iPads and social media, and that's becoming their world. And as a father with 2 young children, it's so challenging to protect them and keep them at least to a point where they can make their own decisions.
Yeah, I mean, the tech is here to stay. AI is here to stay. And I don't think it's a bad thing. It is with any technology, guy. The tech is never right, wrong, good, or bad. It's the thinking underlying how it's applied. I mean, we learned that when we split the atom. It could have been used for a million things. We split the atom during wartime, so it was used as a weapon. And we see that happening again and again. So, the AI is here to stay. Have fun with it and experiment with it. Be conscious of your values and how much of yourself you are willing to give away. And I invite people to take it as a personal challenge. Every time your reaction is, hey, let me have ChatGPT write this paper or do this for me, take that as a challenge. Do it yourself. Unless your job or your life depends on that particular thing, your first instinct is to have the computer do it for you. Do it yourself. There's some really good things. I mean, for example, there are AIs that have been built to scour the global databases of indigenous plants and to find which plants have anti-carcinogenic properties. Okay, it would take humans a long time to do that. Once they do that, now an individual can go to their doctor, and if they are presenting a malignancy, then they can use AI to access that database and customize just the right combination of anti-carcinogens for exactly the malignancy they have, rather than taking something that floods the whole body and levels the immune system, which can work, for some people, but it's hard on them. So, I mean, that's a beautiful, positive application of AI.
Yeah.
In my opinion. My wife is a voting member of the Grammys, and the challenge the Grammys have right now is what happens when someone has ChatGPT 5 write the lyrics to a song, and then they say, okay, now ChatGPT 5 create the music to go with the lyrics, and then they enter those in the competition with a human who has spent 30 or 40 years honing their vocal craft or their instrumental craft. Is that a fair competition? And we don't know the answer. The Grammys are struggling with this because it happened so fast. It's so new. My sense is they'll probably have a separate category for AI kinds of music. But this just 2 weeks ago, so early December, late November, early December, an AI country western song was #1 on the charts. And the musicians are saying, is this fair to have we're competing with a computer now. But after a while, again, all the music will start to sound the same and people will lose interest in it. So,
yeah, no, time will tell. Time will tell. Just to wrap this side of the things up, do you think with this convergence and the pressure that is coming under, there is an aspect that it's almost forcing us to reflect and look within, because we're always looking outside of ourselves for answers. We're always relying upon the things outside of us and putting meaning to it, even the AI.
Yeah, our conditioning. So we are the product of about 4 decades of indoctrination in Western education that says we are a flawed form of life, that human biology is flawed in its very nature. And because we're conditioned to believe that, We are taught that we are victims of that flaw. And if you're a victim, you need a savior. And the savior is being touted as technology. So we have been conditioned to believe we need something outside of ourselves to be the best version of ourselves. What this all comes down to, Guy, if I didn't know what time it is, but if we're going to wrap this up, I want to say it all comes down to love. And the question we have to ask ourselves is, do we love ourselves enough to accept the gift of our humanness? And it is a gift, because the biology tells us we appeared on this earth 200,000 years ago, and scientists agree with that date, 200,000 BP, before present. We don't know where we came from. But when we compare our DNA today with the fossilized DNA extracted from the earliest members of our species, what we find is that we're not the product of evolution the way Darwin proposed. We're not the product of a long, slow, gradual process of evolution. We showed up 200,000 years ago with the DNA and the genome that we have today. We have not changed in those 200,000 years. That's not Darwin's idea of evolution. And then you say, how did that happen? What we know is there were a series of mutations that cannot happen in nature that give us our humanness, that give us the entire neocortex. For example, the human brain. It's where the empathy, sympathy, compassion, logic, forgiveness, love, all comes from the neocortex. That is the product of human chromosome number 2 that was fused 200,000 years ago in a way that cannot happen under natural conditions. So that's another conversation, maybe another podcast. But the point is, the scientific community, the scientists who are willing to look at the evidence honestly, are now concluding that we are the product of some kind of intervention. And I think that's a fair word. It's a fair statement. It doesn't say who or what, but it says there is some kind of intervention that has happened to give us our humanness. So when I say the gift of our humanness, it's intentional, because we are not the product of random mutations and lucky biology. We're much more than that. So the question is, do we love ourselves enough to accept the gift that we were given 200,000 years ago? And that's not a question you can answer with words. We answer that through the way we live our lives. So it's up to us how much of the choice we make every day affirms or denies the gift of our humanness. And I think that's our challenge right now.
Totally. I'm aware of the time. We've got a couple of minutes, Greg, but it might be too big a question. Yeah. But to answer that is that when you're speaking of these things, like I was never taught this at school. It's not getting taught. It takes somebody like yourself to be vocal about it.
Yeah,
so this information's getting out there.
It's not in the mainstream. However, it is peer-reviewed science. The real scientists know this. Not the pop scientists that you see on network television. There's a battle to perpetuate the narrative of the origin of the universe and the origin of our species. It's called the standard model for both. And there is an academic and a religious and a political and a technological battle to maintain the story that we've been taught, even though the evidence no longer supports the story. Proceedings from the National Academy of Sciences, the volume is called Genetics, tells us we're human chromosome 2. It tells us it's the product of a fusion that can't happen in nature. And so we know that. But you're right, this is not being taught in the mainstream. And that's why I've written books like this. And I think it's important to take this directly to the people, well-researched. If I write a white paper, it's going to circulate for 6 or 8 years and be published in some obscure journal. And I lost my credibility as a scientist the moment I began to cross those traditional boundaries and talk about spirituality with our humanness. Science doesn't like to go in that direction, and that's okay. That's okay. I'm fine with that. So I think it's important. Some people will hear this and it will speak to them, and others may not want to hear this right now, but But then something will happen in their lives and they'll remember this conversation and they'll come back to it and they'll say, that's what they were talking about. So
for sure.
So it all works. It all works.
I don't know whether it's like the old romantic in me or I'm just naive, but like I don't understand why we're not all sitting around the table just saying, well, what's best for us all here as a human species?
I think fear is the answer to that, because what we're talking about is so very different from the way we've been taught to think in the past, Guy. And I think the fear is that it implies a personal responsibility in the way we live our lives and a personal responsibility for our own health. And sometimes it's easier to believe that we have no power over those things and that things just happen. And then things happen and we deal with them, rather than to think in any way we could have any kind of responsibility for anything that's happening in our lives. And it takes time to come to terms with it. It'll take a generation. But if we give our humanness away, none of that makes any difference. So our goal, at least right now, is to preserve our humanness so that we can have these conversations 10 years, 20 years from now.
Yeah,
I think that's what's up for all of us right now.
Yeah, look, Gregg, thank you so much. I really appreciate everything you do and coming on. Is there anything you want to add? Like, we've covered a lot in the last 55 minutes.
There is something I want to add, because you just told me you're a father. I've never been blessed with children, and I want to thank you for the babies you brought into this world with your partner or your wife, and I want to thank everyone watching for the children bringing into the world, because there is a rapid decline in birth rates on the planet. We are dropping below our replacement rate. We need 2.1 babies for every fertile woman, and we have dropped below that just to maintain the same level of population. And the false narrative is that there are too many people. And that's not true. We have the resources, we have the food. Our job is to make it a priority to get the resources of the food to the people that need them. And we've never had the leadership to do that. And I'm not saying it has to be American or European or Australian. I'm just saying the thinking to feed our brothers and sisters with what we have, that leadership on a global level hasn't been there. So I'm saying this to say thank you for being a dad. And I know I can just sense you're a really good dad, Guy. So thank you for doing that. And we need all the young ones we can get in this planet.
Yeah, honestly, Gregg, it's the best thing I could have ever asked for. I didn't know it. I left it till later in life, thinking I was terrified of it, and then when it happened, it was, wow, it's life changing. It truly is.
Does that mean it's too late for me?
It's never too late in my eyes, mate. But yeah.
All right. Okay. That's another conversation, Guy.
Sure. Thank you so much, Gregg. Where's the best place to send people? I'll have links in the show notes anyway if they want to find out more of your work.
My brother, thank you for this conversation. If people would like to find out any more, the best place about me is just to go to the website, Gregg, Gregg, 2 G's, Braden, Braden.com. All of the live speaking events, all the tours, all the books, all the media, they're all right there somewhere on that website that somebody else manages for me.
Thank you so much, man. Thank you.
All right. God bless. Have a beautiful holiday. Thank you.